that. And sorry that I missed the last meeting, but I'm glad we're all back together and moving on. So we're just going to start by doing some introductions. And I think the easiest way to do that in the Zoom world is for me just to call your name. So I will start with Lori.
Hey there, I'm Lori, working with John here on the CHIP project of updating the strategic plan.
Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan O'Brien, nurse practitioner at the school-based health centers in Port Townsend and Chimacum, and also at the main health clinic, sexual and reproductive health.
Julie.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Canterbury, and I am the director of MCS counseling. We have several contracts with the school-based health clinic, with the police department, the sheriffs, with navigators, and we also have private practice therapy, counseling.
Jean.
Hi, I am the clinical director for Jumping Mouse Children's Center. I think everyone here knows what we do, but we do therapy with kids ages 2 to 12, and we are located right across from Salish, and then we also have a site in Brennan where we're providing therapy for kiddos.
Alexa.
Hi, I'm Lexa Murphy. I'm a child psychologist. I work in independent practice and therapy, mostly with teens in Port Townsend. I work at Julie's MCS doing diagnostic assessment, and I teach child psych at Seattle U.
Denise.
I'm Denise Banker, and I run a grant that supports prevention of youth alcohol, tobacco, and other drug misuse. And I work primarily in the Chimacum School District, but my employer is Jefferson County Public Health.
And Trish.
I'm superintendent and principal at the Brennan.
She just
So
walked off the grid.
And I'm walking while I participate today on our wonderful walking path.
Kate.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Kate Dean, Commissioner, Jefferson County. Jealous of Trish out walking. I have 2 teenagers. Let's just say that. Personally and professionally invested in this work.
And Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya Barnett. I'm the Family Resource Navigator with the YMCA. It's good to be here with you.
Thanks, everyone. So Lori is going to operate the slides today, and I'm going to kind of facilitate, though it's definitely trying to focus on a very participatory meeting. So we've done the welcome and introductions. I would like to do a little roundtable kind of update, just give any quick hitter about actions or activities that have taken place since our last meeting. Lori and you all have been working on a resource list, which we're gonna project for you to see, and then we'd like you to think about that and see if there's opportunities to add to that. And then the main focus of the meeting, it will be to look at that strategic framework that we've been working on and try to kind of tune that up. And I think the focus that I'd like to work on today as we look at it is, if we do those actions that are listed in the strategic framework, will it really help us to get to our goal of 0 suicides in Jefferson County among adolescents? So you can, as you're looking at that framework, I want you to kind of think through that piece. And then at the end, we'll just talk about kind of what next steps are, and then how we proceed and try to tee up an agenda for the next meeting. So any questions, comments, thoughts about that agenda seem okay to everybody? Kind of a, yep, I see heads nodding, that's good. So the roundtable, Lori had a few things that have come in since the last meeting. She's going to run over those, and then if you don't have any comments, that's fine. But if you do, if you would just kind of raise your hand or let us know that you have something to say. So Lori, I'll let you run through these first few slides.
Okay. And I'm going to throw up slides, and there are probably people who know more about this topic than I do. Like I'm thinking Lexa might know more about the mental health survey, and she could tell us a little bit. I just quickly made a slide, but you probably got more up-to-date details on it.
Yeah, so this is a survey that is basically replicating the questions that were asked in the CDC Healthy Youth Survey every 2 years. So we have data from 2018 and it was scrapped in 2020. So the Benji project partnered with Be Healthy Jefferson to try to just get some data that's fresh to this year. And there are also a couple items from recent COVID impact surveys that have been developed and used in other studies. So it's brief 10 questions, and to my understanding, it's available to all 10th graders in Chimacum and Jefferson and potentially Ocean as well. And it closes at the end of this week. So we're hoping to take a look and be able to update what we know about mental health in teens and the impact of COVID from this year.
Well, that's stellar work. I'm really excited that you guys got it out there and it's already in progress. Are there any questions folks have of Lexa before we move on? Yeah, good work, good work. Okay.
I have a quick question. I'm just curious, are you getting good responses on it? And is there a need for pushing it out more at this point, or is it a little late in the process?
There's a need for pushing it out more. I can speak less about the partnerships with the schools because Heather McRae Wolf has taken that on. It's voluntary as we want it to be when talking about mental health and anything involving research. And we incentivized it such that 10 students will be randomly selected to receive $25 Amazon gift cards. So I don't think we're at the total that we've hoped for, but the survey also isn't closed. So if you have ideas about ways to push it out more, if you want to shoot me an email or back channel to Cynthia as well.
Okay, great. And is it fairly easy to find a link to the survey?
It is, yeah. I'll shoot you an email and connect with you about it.
Or maybe
we have like a tiny URL for it.
Can I get a link too? I think it would be great to share with my school counselors.
Mm-hmm.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Julie.
And then I had a question also. How long do you think it's going to be before you have the results for the survey, all those numbers crunched? And will those results be shared widely, or will they be, sort of sequestered by the agencies who did the survey?
No, our hope is to distribute it widely. So we're using a survey platform called Qualtrics. So the minute it's closed, it's just done and the analyses are done, which is really lovely. I think we're most interested in comparing it to rates in 2018, because that's our most recent benchmark. But I know the Benji project is working on trying to figure out the fastest way to disseminate the information. I would want to make sure that we have enough students participate that it feels representative. Yeah.
What schools was it again?
Port Townsend High and Chimacum. I think there were 10th grade teachers that had access to all students, and they in those schools, and they added it to their Google playlist. There's also been a recent mental health survey, I think of all 10th graders, that came a week before ours that we weren't aware of. So I also know there was concern about just burden and overload. We've been asking kids to take surveys. So I'm not sure if all schools were able to promote it just because, yeah, we were up against another survey. So hopefully both have
did some sort of a survey too. I'd have to go back and look where it came from.
Yeah, I can't remember from the top of my head.
I think we'd be very interested in where that survey came from and what it was.
It's ESD did that survey. My understanding is it was ESD.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Susan, I didn't realize you were on the call, but Susan might have more information about dissemination of different schools or can correct anything that I said that wasn't accurate too.
Well, everything you said was accurate, but the cool scene was not part of it because that was the superintendent's concern, was that this had just happened. So I don't think any of the 10th graders there have access to that.
Is there any way we could track down the ESD survey and what they were looking at, and if we could share in their in the knowledge that they reaped from that?
I could actually see if Holly, the new student assistance professional at the Port Townsend Port Townsend High School, or no, wait a minute, Blue Heron. I could see if Holly has access to that survey.
Okay, great. Moving quickly then, I wish Jenny were here because Jenny's the one who's always talking about data, and today we've got so much to talk about here. She did send me in between whenever the last meeting was and now a connection to a resource around training. And I don't know if she knew more about it that she would have spoken to if she was here, but I've put a link to the training up both on the website, which you can get through that link. And here's the direct link right here. And perhaps we talk about that more at a meeting where Jenny's here and can give us more oversight to what she was thinking as she looked at that resource. This is another thing which may or may not be useful, but I'm just throwing it up here. I get all of these notices about several things. There is some provider survey that's being presented. I don't know if it would have insightful information, but it was focused on youth and behavioral health. So I just threw it up here and a link to how you would go register for that if you were interested. And then we had a gal reach out to us. Her name is Emma Khang. She's a senior student at Idaho State University, and she is required as her senior project to write a proposal for a public health intervention here in Port Townsend, because each of them have been asked to create a proposal for the town that they were born in. So John and I had a chance to talk to her, and John, you should jump in here if you have anything that you want to highlight here in this conversation. But she's very interested in working with us on something. We can see that she's very young, and we thought maybe there was something here related to this group and the work that we're doing here that she might be able to write a proposal about. And I don't think anybody's saying that she would absolutely dedicate herself to it, but maybe we could talk her into doing some sort of an internship here around whatever she proposed. So the specifics of what her what her proposal must address, I have listed here. It's very general in terms of what gaps she might look at. And I figure with this group looking at youth, maybe there'll be something that will pop to mind before I let her go out into the rest of public health and offer her out there. I thought I'd see if there's anything this group might have for her. I don't know if we want to talk about that a little bit, brainstorm a bit, or if you'd like to go away and think about it. She does have a timeline. I think she has to present the proposal. It was in May, correct, John?
Yeah, and it's, you know, the work is that she presents a proposal. It isn't actually that she's going to do the work. So, but it might give us a leg up on some work that we might want to do down the road. So I think it's just an opportunity that's, you know, we should consider.
A couple of things that we batted around was the okay not to be okay campaign, and I don't know what she could propose there, but was there something there? Or, you know, we have as a group talked a lot about the research that is out there, and how could we kind of get a summary of what is out there, which I know is an awfully big project, but I don't know if there's something in there that this group would find useful that we could ask her to create a proposal around.
Lori, why don't we run through the meeting, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end. And if we do, because maybe as we go through the meeting, some things, ideas will pop into people's minds.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, and then quickly on the youth resource list, we got this. We've gotten several bits of information. It's the most latest version of it is also up on the website. What I wanted to highlight here, we have some solid information from the YMCA, from the Empowered Teens Coalition, juvenile court services. There's a mental health referral service. All of the information that Jefferson Healthcare sent me is very useful, but it doesn't have any specific contact information. And I'm looking to see if Molly is here. So I don't know if more is coming on that or not, but the consensus of this group was that it would be really useful to start. In fact, I think it was Molly's idea to start with a list of the resources that we have at our disposal. And so I'm reaching back to you to say, one, we still need Discovery Behavioral Health's information. And I don't know what other information is out there that still needs to come my way, but to remind you, it needs to come our way. And if there is something more, better, different that you want in this list, speak up so that we can make sure that we're accommodating that as we create this resource. Are there any thoughts on that topic? And I'm laughing because the title of the slide has nothing to do with the slide. My apologies. Was that the same on the other one too? Is that the same on all of them? Yeah.
I noticed that 5 minutes before the meeting.
Well, I'll tell you, somebody told me once that whenever you're preparing something and it's a big deal, you should always await the one thing that is the mix up, because that is a place where the good spirit goes in and out of the effort where you made that error. So that's where our goodwill is going in and out.
So I have a question. Is this the complete list that you have for those 2 slides?
It is 3 slides, I think, but that is the complete list that I have to date.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to get MCS on there as for school counseling for the resources?
You know what,
I think
I
I was
had put an
missing that.
input, I had put an input in with that. I thought, I don't see it there. So I did put school-based health centers, which have, of course, the counselors. So
I'm
maybe I
sorry.
didn't enter it properly or something. I don't know, Lori. I did it like, so.
But we
maybe I
don't
did
have a
it wrong.
school-based health center, but we do have MCS counseling. So that's super valuable.
You know, part of the reason we are putting this up here is so that as you look at it, hopefully it triggers for you some thoughts about other resources that are available in the community that we don't have. And so send those to us and Lori and I'll add it to this sheet. I don't, you know, at this point, it's certainly not a fully baked solution. So what we really want to do is have it be kind of a living, breathing document and add to it.
And Susan, I'm sorry, if I got something from you, I don't have it categorized properly in all my emails, so it didn't get into this, but I'm happy to get those in there quickly and get that up.
It was probably my error. I thought I was entering it right into it. So I can do that again. So.
Okay. Well, we'll get together and make sure that's in there. Julie, does that then address what you were thinking about?
Yeah, I think I missed this meeting when you guys were doing this, so I apologize for that.
No worries. Are there any other resources besides school-based that you think we should go chase to make sure we get into this list? Okay, moving right along then. This was something that came from Sam Troxler. She wanted to know if we could generate a list. Actually, she wanted to know if I could generate a list, and I'm coming to you guys because I don't know where to get all of this information. Of all of the youth-related meetings that are going on and their, host date, time, mission of the meeting, the goals identified for those various groups, because she has a youth team member that's going to be starting and she'd like to get them hooked in properly. And so I'm checking with you folks to see, is this something that you might find valuable as well? And could I prevail upon you to give me information for the meetings that you know that have these specific data points that I could start to generate a list from that would also be a living, breathing, updatable document. Anybody think that's a terrible idea? Let's start there. Okay, it's a good idea.
I know that Sam is well underway in this, and I would hate to, for us to kind of shake our brains out to do that. So if she could send us what she already has, because I've been on at least 2 meetings so far where this has come up, and we've sort of brainstormed through this.
Okay, so I'm gonna reach back to Sam, say, you send us what you've got, and then I will somehow get that out to you folks, and you'll at least have been introduced to the idea and know what's going on there.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Lori, I have sent Sam information also.
Okay. Well, the good news is we've got lots of people working on it, so it should get done in short order here. I think then, John, that ends the roundtables items.
Well, I did want to give people an opportunity, are there things that have happened since the last meeting that, are important for the work that this group is doing? And so Denise, I see you have your hand raised, so go ahead.
Yeah, the Empowered Teens Coalition in Chimacum has partnered with MCS Counseling, and now we have another day of counseling in the junior senior high school. So that'll run through June 30th, and then along with the coalition, MCS and the school district will be working on a way to sustain that funding for the next 2 years. So with my grant, there's always some restrictions on what has to happen in order to spend the money on what everybody wants in the local area. And so we have to work on it to figure out how we can sustain it. But it goes through the 30th of June.
Oh, that's great news to have some additional resource.
Oh, Kate, go ahead and I'll go after you.
Oh, well, maybe we were going to say the same thing, Julie. Also, in partnership with MCS Counseling, the Sheriff's Department has hired a navigator to be joining law enforcement, which I'm just so pleased about. And it's only a short-term contract. The funding was only for 6 months. Is that right, Julie? And then I'm really hoping for an extension. So maybe you'd all heard that good news, but I'm just so pleased that MCS is willing to partner with us on that, and really hoping to change our ability to respond appropriately to a lot of the calls that we get.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually for 3 months. It started in January, but were able to start a couple days ago. So, but we're hoping to get it extended another 1.5 years. And we also received some funding to do training. And so one of the trainings that we're working on doing is mental health first aid. And having that available, we're doing adult mental health first aid and children's mental health first aid. And so I'm not really sure where that fits in here of how to get it into schools or to get it into training, but that is a resource that we are doing because of this funding that we got. So that I think could be something that could be helpful in this setting.
Julie, if you want to send that out to Lori or me, we can send it out to the group. So if anybody wants to participate, they can.
And I have that huge list of ongoing list of collaborators. It seems like a lot of folks on there might be interested, if you wouldn't mind it going out that far. And I know that I was part of one back in 2015 with public health, a training. So I think that in my understanding, and Denise, maybe you know, that was the most recent mental health first aid training.
Yeah, and I went to one in Clallam County in 2019. And then I know Ciela Meyer has done a couple this year with the school districts. And I'm wondering, Julie, is your funding to work with Ciela? Okay.
It's different, but I think it would be great. It's good to know that Ciela does that, so I'll connect with her.
Okay, and yeah, I think that it'd be great if maybe Dove House, or excuse me, Recovery Cafe knows about this for all of their volunteers and members, and you know, then the rest of the community too has this opportunity to take this.
There was a huge contingent of guardian ad litems, I remember, at the 2015 training. So that was a really great population as well.
All right. Any other comments or actions or activities since last meeting? Good. Okay. So we're going to take a look at the strategic framework, which is kind of, oh, go ahead, Jean.
Sorry. I just want to share, I think it's appropriate to share it here, but Tanya facilitated the meeting where DCYF came and talked to providers about what their role in this is in our community, and just gave a chance to answer questions, and it was super helpful. And Tanya did a great job facilitating it. And there's going to be these happening quarterly where we can kind of ask questions of other agencies. So maybe everyone knows that, but it was really, really helpful for our agency.
Jean, it was so helpful to have you on there. It was just, you really opened up the whole conversation, and that recording is on our website. And I don't even really know what that is, but if you Google Jefferson County YMCA, you will find our website, sorry. But that, yeah, that recorded meeting is there. And then the next meeting will be June 11th with OlyCAP. That's the agency that we'll do a deep dive on. Thank you for remembering that, Jean. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
We can put a link to that also in the notes for this meeting. We'll link to that recording, Tanya.
I do think one of the powerful things about this group getting together is just kind of sharing that type of information. And one of the activities that's in the strategic framework is to try to develop an ongoing adolescent behavioral health group that shares that type of information, because there's a lot of power in just people knowing all the things that are going on in terms of adolescent behavioral health in our community. So I think that's a great opportunity. This slide is just a reminder of kind of how this strategic framework is set up, and what is at different levels. And we're really actually focusing on the activity level right now. We're going to look at a few things in the goal and strategy level, but we really want to focus on the activities for this group and really try to get out there and do some things that we're hoping will make a difference in terms of adolescent suicide and behavioral health in our community. So next slide. So this is, there are 2 pages here that I think Laurie's pointing to the link at the bottom, which will take you to the full strategic framework if you want to take a look at that. Oh, thanks, Laurie. That's probably a better way to do it. So what we have is at the goal level that we want to reduce Jefferson County's adolescent suicide rate to 0. And the activity that's left on that is to put a year and a date associated with that. So by when. I think I'm going to fly over at this point, and then we can come back and try to fill in some of these blanks. The objective is to improve resources for adolescent behavioral health. The strategy is to identify and execute a plan to improve the success of youth connecting and availing themselves of community, family, and school services that support and improve mental health. And then I'm just going to read through the activities real quick, because I think that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. So the first one was to create a resource map of agencies and organizations that are available for the relevant services. The second one is to look at the Maryland Quality of Mental Health Care Teaming Program. The third one is to create a robust, intentional,
sorry.
That's okay, intentional educational opportunities for youth to discuss issues around suicide. And there's a program, the Zero Suicide Program, that might do that. The fourth objective is design a process for better integration for services around the community, family, school, and improve on how our kids are served by all. The fifth one, develop a method to communicate youth-related community efforts between providers. And then the sixth one is to bring the ESD in to help assessing Jefferson's specific action plan to reduce the suicide rate to 0. So again, for me, the overarching question is, if we do these things, is it likely that we're going to reduce the adolescent suicide rate to 0? And then just in general, interested in folks' comments or thoughts about that strategic framework and kind of where it is and what we might need to do to kind of complete it and to start some of those activities that are in the plan. So I'm going to kind of open it up for comments at this point, and Why don't we do hand raising if that's okay, just because it's a little easier to kind of control the flow of who's commenting. So thoughts? Don't all jump at once.
Is there a way to put the plan back up on our screen as we're talking?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have my hand up, John. I don't know if you can see it.
Good, thanks, Kate. I have to kind of switch back and forth, so I was just getting to you.
Oh, thank you. My curiosity, and we're sitting here with a bunch of professionals. You probably understand this issue and maybe even have some solutions. But I would think that we would need a lot of different modalities to reach a lot of different kids, right? I mean, we know that there are kids who have a lot of support at home and maybe have been raised with a lot of emotional intelligence, and they know how to seek resources and are comfortable going into the clinic and the school by themselves. And we know that we have kids on the other end of the spectrum who, maybe have had contact with the court system in some way. Presumably they also would have access to services, and those pathways would be pretty clear. But what about the vast majority of teens that generally don't seek out a lot of communication with adults? Just curious, like, what do we know? What does the evidence point to as being effective to reach the teens that are hard to reach? Because I see my kids just like they're like, I would never do that stuff. There's a lot of well-intentioned programming that does not appeal to a lot of teens. And as adults, we can think, oh, shouldn't that be fun and interesting? And they're like, no, I roll, So I'm just like, I really would like to stay centered on like, how are we focused on reaching kids where they're at, and what do we know about that? And I've probably brought it up here before, and I'm sorry if I have. Cynthia Osterman is tired of me asking this, but I just really want that to continue to be a centering point for us.
I think it's really appropriate that you brought that up, because I think it's a really valid concern. And I think when you look at the plan, that may be a gap that we haven't addressed yet. I think Jean was first, and then Denise.
Well, I have many opinions about this. Whether they are evidence-based is another question, but I will say, and I don't work with teens specifically, but my experience with older kids is that the side-by-side activity is really important. Like when I work with parents who have older kids, I say, don't try to do this. They're not going to do this. You got to sit next to them like this and have something that you're doing with them. And that's how you build connection and relationship and bring them in. So when I think about kids, I think about like, the boiler room going away was hard, because I think about spaces where teens get to come together and just be teens, like do whatever they're doing, but there's some safe adults that are near with them. So where are the spaces? Where do we have spaces where kids who are maybe a little having some difficulty at home, or even having difficulty connecting with peers at school, have those kind of alternative safe spaces to go, where there's not, where they can experience connection with other peers and where there's safe adults. And I think we have some of those in our community, but I don't feel that we necessarily have enough. And I wonder like what those activities would be. So.
Thanks, Jean. Thanks so much for that side-by-side activity, because I'm actually going to use that tonight when I'm teaching guiding good choices. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I wanted to mention that the Dove House and Recovery Cafe, I was talking to Cheryl Weinstein yesterday, and she is hoping to start a program at the Recovery Cafe for teens during some of their hours that would be on by some measure similar to the boiler room. And then, I really can identify with what Kate has said here. And I'm glad that you brought up Cynthia Osterman also, because this came up in a meeting that we had not so long ago, where folks were saying, well, has anybody asked the kids what they're interested in? And that's always an issue for the Empowered Teens Coalition too, because we have a bunch of agency professionals on this coalition. We're making all these decisions about what to do to help teens, and we don't really have their input. And so we're concerned about that. And so to that end, I've started working with Cheyenne at the Teen Center in Chimacum, and we're going to write into our action plan next year that we're going to support the Teen Center by having a space there. So we're going to help them stay in business by paying half their rent. And then we're going to have an evidence-based program called, I'm forgetting the name of it, I have it written down. But at any rate, it is a self-awareness type program that helps people understand who they are in the world, how to interact with other folks in the world, how to stay true to who they are in the world, those kinds of things. And it's not like a let's sit down and do this work. It's a side-by-side deal where we're interacting together doing something, and we're having these conversations. So that's one thing that's going to be out there. I don't know, there's 8 kids who come all the time to the Teen Center right now. Cheyenne's a little bit concerned. She doesn't want it to be a conduit to negative behaviors when they leave the campus, the kids who walk home, that kind of thing. So there are some of those worries that started to come to light with the boiler room too, before it closed down. So.
Did you have your hand up? Susan, did you have your hand up?
I did, but other people have their hand up too. I was just going to say, I appreciate what you were saying, Jean, also, and the side by side. And when I'm talking to teens one-on-one, oftentimes one of the sorts of questions, I'm like, who is it? Like when you are having a hard time, who is it that you talk to? Is there an adult person that you feel safe? That sort of question. And it's interesting to me that there's so many times that kids say, oh no, I don't talk to adults. It's only with my peers. So I guess one of my questions is there a way that there can be some peer, I love the idea of a safe adult in the room, but there's other peers and there's just kind of, I think there's something there that could be really beneficial. But yeah, they're talking to each other, not always with adults for sure.
Well, I think when I look at the strategic framework, there isn't really anything in there about creating a safe space for teens to be able to, share with each other or share with adult, have safe adults around to be able to share with. And I'm wondering, I think that's a theme that I'm hearing in this conversation, and wondering if that's one of the activities that we want to start to look at. And maybe there's, it sounds like there's something going on with Recovery Cafe. And I think, as Kate said, I think we need probably to have multiple avenues to be able to do that. But I'm wondering if we want to add something like that to the strategic framework. Yeah, sorry, Jean, go.
It's okay. I just was thinking, I like what Denise was saying about surveying kids. Like, what would you what would you love to have available? Like, man, well, let's create a video game room. I don't care if that'll get the kids there, like I sometimes feel like we as adults come with these, like you were saying, these intentions or these structures that aren't quite what the kids resonates with them. So like, what would bring them, and where would the right location be? That's another thing I think of, like if kids can't drive and how do they get there? Do we have some we located on a public bus route? Are we at the high school where kids are afterwards, they can come, you know? So is it basketball and a video game room? And I don't know what it is, but maybe we ask them.
Then Tanya, please.
Thank
say-
you. Thank you. I would just, on that note, Jean, I just keeps occurring to me over and over again as I'm out in the community that we really do have to think of multiple centers of service. And, you know, in the past, I've worked on a grant proposal that would have had a service center at connected with each of our school districts. That unfortunately was not funded, but I haven't let go of that vision. And I know that there are others like Jenny V out there who really hold on to this vision of some sort of a community service support center, one in Brennan, one in Quilcene, one in Chimacum, one in Port Townsend, so that for this very reason that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket, and that basket happens to be in Port Townsend. Just to chime in on that, and yes, please, let's put an additional activity in, John. I think that's super wise. The other thing is just to reflect back another vision for how this might look. I love the idea of surveying the kids and to have in that survey some really concrete things, and then just a place in that survey that just lets them go hog wild and dream big. But one of the things that I was most struck by recently, Denise, was from an Empowered Teens Coalition meeting where it was Gary Coyen who was talking about his success with the Character Strong program. He wrote this really beautiful letter just talking about how he was super skeptical of this program. And I assume it's an evidence-based program. It's a real it does feel well, maybe not.
Well, no, Tanya, it is an evidence-based program. It's not on the SAMHSA list.
Got it.
So we
Okay.
had to fund it the same way we funded the MCS counseling in the school by saying it's a coalition capacity building activity.
Yep, I love that you can do that. I think that's so cool. And he again just very skeptical of this program. It's a very social emotional learning heavy sort of thing, and lots of group time and reflection. And after it sounds like after maybe a couple months of doing it, the kids were demanding it. It was just so effective. So that would be one of perhaps several examples that we could throw out on a survey to say, even if it has to be just like in an anecdotal chunk, to say, here's something really cool that's happening in Chimacum. Is this something that you'd like to see in Quilcene or that you'd like to see in Brennan? So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yep, I know that you talked about a way to maybe connect with youth in the past. So I know you were about to comment, but I also am hoping that you talk a little bit about what you share your thoughts about that as well.
The past stuff.
No, I was talking to Dr. Parker, actually.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know who you were talking to either. Yes, I just wanted to chime in. I think asking the kids is a great idea. And when that suicide occurred last spring, a lot of the kids that I was around all wanted to do something and wanted to help and wanted to weigh in on solutions. So when we were talking about it around the dinner table, my kids had plenty of ideas. And I think even getting them in a room or doing focus groups or pulling just once or twice at the different schools to say, hey, this is the list we have. These are the options. And doing it as a survey or doing it in person might be really dynamic and interesting to do. So I just wanted to chime in and agree with all of you. And John, what else did you ask me about?
That was actually it. I know that you
Okay.
had some thoughts about how to get, some ideas from kids, that we had talked about that in the past. And I just wanted to make sure you shared those ideas with the group, which you just did. So great.
Oh, got it. Well, and I imagine that many of you guys who are in the schools or counseling kids already have avenues to make that happen. Perhaps I'm I'm just guessing, but if not, then maybe we could brainstorm on ways to make it happen.
So I'm thinking about that maybe we need to add a couple of things to the framework. So one is around gathering information, either through a survey or focus groups or both, from kids about what would be effective. And then the second one is to, you know, enhance, add to kind of community resources around gathering places, safe gathering places for kids. Am I kind of on the right track with that? People feel like that's, yeah, okay, good. I think that's good. Lori, do you mind putting the framework back up one more time and let everybody kind of mull on that a little bit?
John, with apologies for being late, and I'm not on screen. I'm actually just north of Sacramento. And Molly, I apologize. I'm not sure what your role is in what's going on in the schools right now. There is a suicide prevention committee happening in the schools.
Is that at Chimicum, Jenny, or Port Townsend?
I'm sorry, Port Townsend.
Port Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
is
that's
that,
great. I have no role in the schools right now, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Molly. I just know that there is a suicide prevention committee that is working, and I'd hate to work in parallel or even in conflict with what they're trying to accomplish.
Do they have teens on that? Do you know, Jenny?
That's a really good question. I know when I worked with the same group after the suicide, we dug pretty deeply into it and worked with the kids at Blue Heron. But whether or not that's continued, or I don't know. Someone might want to contact Kirsten Bledsoe or Shelby McBeacon to talk about who's now participating in that committee. Once we sort of got by the moment, that committee took over.
And do we know if that's active at the high school as well, or just middle
It's
school?
a committee for the whole district.
Okay, great.
And also, as I mentioned before, ESD 114, the Educational Service District, is doing work around suicide prevention. And I talked to Ciela about that, who's our person in 114 here. And they're working on some curricula and recommend a couple as well for staff and community training. One is called Network for Life. You might want to Google that.
Jenny, I think we earlier showed a slide with one of the resources that you had, sent to us earlier. So we're trying to link those things up as we get a chance to do that.
Thank you.
I think it's really important that we connect with any other groups that are doing this type of work. Just, as you said, Jenny, so that we don't, duplicate efforts or work in conflict. So Lori and I can take that responsibility. If any of you know of any other groups that are doing this work, if you would let us know, we'd be happy to do the legwork to reach out to them and see what we can find.
I will send you Ciela's contact information. Okay. And her role at ESD.
It sounds like that's one that should go on the list that Sam Troxler is putting together. Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure Ciela's already on Sam's list, and yeah, Jenny, we mentioned so Julie at MCS is also has a mental health first aid sort of training that they're going to offer, and so I shared Ciela's information with Jenny, or excuse me, Julie about this, and the information about Port Townsend and what Ciela's been doing in the school district.
So opportunity to take one kind of last look at this and see if you have thoughts about changes or additions other than the two that we've talked about. And then we're coming up to the last 5 minutes. I want to make sure that we're good with next meeting time and kind of talk about agenda for that meeting. So kind of in the next 2 or 3 minutes, any thoughts about this framework, and other than the additions that we talked about, any changes that you would like to make? Okay. Kate, I really appreciated your comments at the start of the meeting. I think it really helped kind of ground us in kind of what are the practical activities that we can really do to, to help really start helping kids. And so thanks for kind of keeping us honest with that. I think that was really helpful. Lori, do you mind going back to the slides? And just hit the last couple of slides here. So next steps in meeting, we're scheduled to meet on April 22nd at the same time. Is that generally time still good for folks? Kind of thumbs up. Yep, I'm seeing a few heads nodding. Okay, good. And then kind of agenda items for what Lori and I will do is take the feedback that we have, make changes to the strategic framework. I'm feeling some anxiety to try to, start moving some of this stuff forward. So maybe I would suggest maybe at the next meeting we could talk about possibly setting up focus groups, or how we would do a survey. So why don't you think about that as homework for the next meeting? Because I think that's something. Yeah, go ahead, Jean.
I was just going to say, I wonder if we could also in that conversation kind of bring our ideas. I think it was Molly, somebody, or maybe Tanya mentioned having like some specific ideas that kids could say, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then also a place where they could be like, oh, here's what sounds cool. So maybe we could work together to hone in on like what would be our list of offering potentials, and then also the space for them to fill in the blank too.
And I think to be really effective, after the next meeting, we may make some small subgroup assignments for people to go out and work on some specific things, just to kind of keep things moving along between meetings, because I think this is a lot of work to do, and it's not all going to happen in a 1-hour meeting, every 3 weeks. So kind of be prepared for that. And if you have the capacity and interest in working on some of the individual projects, I think we're at the point where we really need to start thinking about that. So does that kind of, oh, sorry, go.
Kate had her hand raised.
Go, Kate.
Yeah, I do like that. I wonder if a next step, moving along this same line of thought, John, I wonder if we could spend some time brainstorming on youth engagement and how we get more feedback. And that would be probably need to look a little different in each of our communities. But I think this group would be really beneficial in identifying some strategies. I will say too, my son has been representing students specifically on teen mental health for the State School Directors Association all year, and testifying in the legislature. And I mean, he's dug pretty deep into this, and so he could be a good resource too, both for reaching kids, but yeah, also just kind of the landscape and how that's being received in the schools, and so he could be a good resource for it.
Do you think he'd be willing to come and talk to this group?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that might be a really valuable experience for I think we definitely need the adolescent, to learn more about the adolescent experience. So let me talk with you a little bit offline about whether we could have him come and talk even at the next meeting for a few minutes.
Okay, and he's, I don't want to pretend like he's representative of all kids or anything, but he's had his finger on this pulse for a little while, and so I think he could have some intel for us in a world that I find opaque and hard to look into and understand.
All right, so, go ahead, Lori.
I just wondered, do we want to think about anything with that resource, Emma Khang, who was interested in developing a proposal, or do I want to release her to the rest of public health? Go ahead, Tanya.
I would need to go back to the plan, but I noted 1A.4. That seemed like the next page. Sorry. So if you go back to the strategic plan, thank you. Design a process for better integration of services across community, family, and school, and improve. Whoopsies. It's expanding on me. Oh, goody. Oh, good. Family and school, and improve how our kids are served by all. So the first part of that sentence, design a process for better integration of services across community. I don't know if that's what would interest her, but it seems like that having an outsider's perspective on how we might do that. And I like, yeah, Kate's, your comment too. I'm thinking that would be just a really fresh perspective on that question.
Well, we'll go back to her then, I think, with that.
I like that idea. Thanks, Tanya.
Mhm.
All right, well, we're in our last couple of minutes. Any kind of parting thoughts or comments? And I think the focus for next meeting will be on how we engage youth and get information from them, and then some additional tune-up of the strategic framework. You'll have an opportunity to see the additional things that we'll put in based on today's conversation. And then, I think based on what we hear from youth, then we might want to make some changes to the framework based on the information that we get. But I think that a good next step is to develop a plan for how to do that. And Tanya, I see you have your hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Just the obvious for this intern, I don't remember her timeline, but for her to help out with this process of getting youth feedback, I mean, that would be ideal as well, if just depending on her skill set and what is most appropriate for her course of study. But if she would like to have that experience in facilitating groups, that would be amazing.
So the first part of what she'll do is to develop a proposal. And I don't know if we have a guarantee that she'll come and execute that proposal, but it certainly might be a way to start the groundwork toward getting there.
I also think when I look around the room, and not to comment on your average age, but we are all somewhat removed from the youth experience, and she certainly is a lot closer to it. So she may have a better perspective about, what would work with youth. So that actually might be a pretty good plan. So I hope I didn't insult anybody there. It was intended to be kind of a joke, but all right. Well, we're at time, and as always, I just want you to all know how much Lori and I appreciate the work that you're doing to try to make things better for youth in our community. And for me, this is taking care of our kids is the most important thing that we do. And so I'm so grateful to all of you for participating, and I'm hoping we can put some pieces together that really make a difference for kids in our community. So thanks. And we'll
John, just
you in a few weeks.
I'm sorry, just one last question. Do we have any contacts with Peninsula or Olympic community? You want to participate from those organizations?
Jenny, you were breaking up just a little bit. Was it the Olympic Communities of Health or the mental health agencies?
No, I'm just wondering if, because there's a group of folks there who are younger than most of us. I'm wondering if Olympic Community College or Peninsula College have some local folks that might participate in what we're trying to accomplish.
I think Lori and I can chase that down and see if there's any opportunity there.
They do have the substance use certificate program, which might have students needing to do projects in the community.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. And we'll see you in about 3 weeks.
Good to have you back, John.
Thank you
for being here.
Yep. Thanks a lot. See you in a while.
Bye.
Bye.